Hello and welcome back to Factorio Space Age. After conquering Vulcanus in the last episode, I'm currently aboard Reliant Robin with all the materials I'm going to need to get set up on our next planet, Fulgora. It's not long before we arrive, and I can descend to the surface. Fulgora is definitely the most conceptually interesting planet in the star system. The majority of the planet is covered in an oily desert into which any buildings sink, with only a few rocky outcroppings of solid ground breaking the surface. On some of these islands we can find evidence of an ancient extinct civilization, only the ruins of their abandoned cities remaining. The Fulgoran society seems to have been especially advanced, given that they appear to have consumed all of the resources on the entire planet, with all that remains for us to harvest being the vast piles of scrap which they left behind. More about scrap soon, but first I need to talk about the planet's most forthcoming characteristic, the lightning. It appears that Fulgora's surface is enveloped in a perpetual storm, perhaps a consequence of the ancient Fulgoran society's massive environmental meddling, which means that every night the ground is assaulted by bolts of lightning from above. The only respite from this is lightning rods to attract the lightning, either the ones left behind in the ruins, or those that we can craft ourselves. To unlock the technology which will allow us to process all this scrap into useful materials, I first need to mine a Fulgoran vault ruin, which I eventually find out here on an island to itself. This unlocks scrap recycling, which turns scrap randomly into any of these 12 materials on the screen now. The highlights are of course processing units and LDS, two of the most expensive intermediates in the game, which we're getting for essentially free, as well as holmium ore. Holmium being the special material only available on this planet, used for advanced electronic devices and this planet's science pack. We also unlock the recycler, a new building which can be used to recycle almost any item, giving back 25% of its ingredients, as well as of course automating the scrap recycling process. I chose this island to set up our starter base, as it's quite large and already has good lightning rod coverage from the ruined city. I start out placing some substations and lightning rods around my landing pad, followed up by a lot of accumulators. You see, every time a lightning rod gets struck, all of that captured energy gets discharged into the grid and can be stored in accumulators, meaning that power on Fulgora basically just costs us a lot of space, since we need to defend against lightning strikes anyway. I then start mining my first scrap patch, which we can insert straight into some recyclers. For now I just went for the simplest sorting setup I could think of. Just dump the materials into a belt loop and pull each item off into its own chest using filter inserters. We then want to pull the holmium ore, stone and ice out, as if we melt the ice into water we can then combine them together to get holmium solution. That can then be run through a foundry to turn it into holmium plates. Once we've crafted 50 holmium plates, we unlock the Electromagnetic plant, this planet's unique building, which is to electronics what foundries are to metal, with 50% base productivity, although only with a crafting speed of 2 this time. Unfortunately it needs refined concrete, which I forgot to bring, so I get that hand automated quickly. The Electromagnetic plant is quite expensive, wanting 50 steel, 50 blue circuits, 50 refined concrete, and 150 holmium plates. But once we've made it the first time, we can craft any more in an electromagnetic plant, so it benefits from the productivity bonus. Although I don't think it's quite as cool as the foundry, I have to admit, the crafting animation is quite good. Running these has revealed that our power storage is far from sufficient, although thankfully we can actually craft accumulators in them to benefit from the productivity, and we already get batteries from recycling scrap. Although we don't get iron plates for the accumulators directly from scrap, we can recycle the iron gears we do get into plates, so it still works out. A large part of the challenge of this planet is not getting the expensive stuff like blue circuits or LDS, but getting the basics like green circuits. Since we aren't directly producing them, I need a way to decide when to scrap the higher level intermediates into lower ones, which at this point is basically boiled down to a circuit condition which checks if there's greater than 2000 of an item in the logistics network, and if there is, it requests it to this chest to be fed into the recyclers. This ensures that given enough time, all items that it is possible to produce from scrap and scrap derivatives and even scrap derivatives will be produced, and also nothing can back up. It has the downside, however, that it will churn through scrap forever, even if there's nothing using the items it's producing, and, as in any given location, scrap is a finite resource. We'll end up spending a lot of time setting up new mines if we leave it this way. Before I can start producing this planet's science pack, the Electromagnetic science pack, I need to get oil. This is easier than it sounds, as remember I spoke about the oily sands covering the planet? It's literally oil. If we place an offshore pump into it, it will pump up heavy oil, which we can easily crack into the light oil we need for science. So if we combine plastic, chromium, copper and light oil, we can make superconductor, the first intermediate. The electromagnetic plants have interestingly distributed fluid parts, though we can place them right next to each other if we mirror the plant. This can be seen better when we craft electrolyte, where we're putting chromium solution in the top, heavy oil in the bottom, and taking the electrolyte out through the middle. It also takes stone, but I appear to have forgotten to input that for the moment. Combining superconductor and electrolyte, as well as chromium plate, green circuits and batteries, we can make supercapacitors, the first ingredient in the electromagnetic science pack. We're actually already producing the other three ingredients, being chromium solution, electrolyte and accumulators, so we can start producing the pack right away. Unfortunately, we're in a bit of a chromium drought at the moment, as most of the ore is being turned into plates for electromagnetic plants, so none is left over to be turned into solution for the science pack. I upgrade the belts in the mines and put speed modules in all of the recyclers, but I don't know if it'll boost production enough. Regardless, I start working on getting rockets automated, so we can launch off the science when it does eventually decide to craft. Which starts with crafting electric engines for the silo, because I forgot to send any over when I arrived. They craft very slowly, however, as we currently have a shortage of green circuits of all things, since not enough red circuits are getting scrapped. At this point, it's probably going to be easier to push through with a rocket and redesign later, as we are getting a trickle of electric engines, so I get rocket fuel automated next, which is really easy, since we're getting solid fuel from recycling scrap, and light oil is free from the desert. Whilst I wait for enough electric engines to accumulate, I'm going to go and explore to see if I can find a suitable island to build the real base. As luck would have it, the island down here is pretty big, and I don't know it yet, but this will be the one I end up selecting. Meanwhile, on the home island, it appears that we're producing enough chromium again, and some of it is backing up into the chest so it can be used for science. The new production is stressing the power grid though, so I start the process of blanketing this adjacent island in accumulators and lightning rods. The silo does eventually craft, so I get that placed down. Since we get blue circuits and LDS from scrap, and we're already crafting rocket fuel, we can immediately start producing rockets. We're still waiting for the 1000 science packs we need to fill one rocket to craft, so for the moment, it's just more waiting. In the meantime, I start spitballing the new base down on that larger island. All I really know at this point is that I want the scrap handling to be done by belt, and the throughput needs to be a lot higher than it is now. The idea that I land on is to have a tileable module, one for each scrap derivative, which siphons it off the central belt, holds it for storage, and sends it back to the recyclers if we have too much of it. The key advantage this has over the other design is that it knows when to stop. It's not the greatest solution, but basically the modules will stop sending overflow to the recyclers if all of the modules have more than 1000 of their item in storage. Meaning that if we run the system for a long time and everything backs up, we won't end up needlessly chewing through scrap forever. It's not perfect and we still waste a lot of resources, but it's miles better than the old solution. The best part of this is that I've finally found an excuse to use another new feature added in Factorio 2.0, parameterized blueprints. You see, the first module I constructed was set up for blue circuits, but rather than have to go through and change the filters and conditions individually every time I paste it, I can designate the blue circuits as a parameter. This means that when I go to place the blueprint, I'll be prompted to pick a parameter, and when I place the blueprint, every instance of blue circuits in it will be replaced by the parameter we just chose. I use this for red circuits first, and it's pretty easy to just keep doing it. So far, Reliant Robin has just been loping around the system where I've sent it, doing menial tasks, so it's about time I put it to work. I've given it a schedule, first to go to Vulcanus and pick up supplies, then to Fulgora to drop off supplies and collect the Electromagnetic science pack, and finally to Nelvis to drop off the science and any Vulcanus buildings it needs. There's still even more waiting for science, so I connect scrap up to the new base and crack on getting some modules connected. It's not long before I have all the items we can get directly from scrap, but there's still some derivatives we can get from scrapping these items to consider. Naturally, while I was pissing around with this, I missed the first rocket launch full of science. Having to wait that long for just a single rocket full of science is ridiculous anyway, so I get started on my new holmium production at the new base, and this time we can actually use belts. This new science build doesn't really look that much bigger, but simply by virtue of being belted and therefore not subject to the inconsistency of robot delivery, it should be far more than enough. We aren't only exporting science packs though, we're also exporting the electromagnetic plant, so we can utilise it on other planets, so I need to get refined concrete automated in the new base. I also need to set rocket fuel back up, and then I can bring the silo over to the new base and start launching my rockets from here. Now that I have my scrap handling fully set up, we're going to be processing through thousands of scrap a minute. So I need something a little bit more substantial than these dinky little patches we've relied on up to this point. I get a rail ramp and some supports and start bridging the gap across the grey oily desert. It's actually harder than I expected to fit the train station, the mines and the power production on the same island, but I ultimately end up with this. This patch has like 23 million scrap in it, which sounds like a lot, but I'm probably going to want more, because I don't know how much longer this run is going to last. These lightning rods I'm using were researched with the Electromagnetic science pack. They're bigger, have more range, and absorb more power, so perfect for remote outposts like these. You can see that I've started researching Gleba, the next planet we'll be visiting, as well as loading Reliant Robin, ready for my first journey there. This might seem a bit premature, and it definitely is, but I've learnt my lesson from the last two planets to get it done ahead of time, as to not have to wait around with nothing to do later. Enough rail supports had crafted by this point to go and set up a second outpost. This island has another vault ruin on it, and is even more of a pain in the arse to set a train station up on, as well as having weird spots of scrap around the outsides, which I need to squeeze some miners onto. But it's got a whole 47 million scrap, so I think we can let it off the hook. If you look up in the research window now, you can see we've got something very interesting cooking, but I'm going to save explaining that for when we unlock it, because some things need to be seen to be believed. In the meantime, I've found something to do with all that scrap we've just connected up. Industrial gambling. I get all 3 tiers of quality modules producing, because we are going to need them. I tried to be really smart with quality and recycling here, but it doesn't end up working at all, so I'm going to just pretend this didn't happen. I don't really understand quality all that much, I'm just along for the ride here. My new plan is simply to produce things we want to produce anyway, like this holmium plate, but to put quality modules into the machine. Any normal quality items we just pass off into the usual production lines, and then we keep the uncommon and rare items to use in higher quality crafting chains. I do the same thing with superconductors next. I'm just going to spoil this because I can't be bothered to slyly talk my way around the goal here. These are all ingredients for that mech armour which I'm researching. It's as cool as it sounds, but not to put the cart before the horse, I'll talk about the other ingredients first. Because we aren't producing green circuits conventionally, and I don't want to have to hand over a litany of extra types of item to process if we put quality modules in the recyclers, I need to try something different with them. Basically, I'll take blue circuits from storage and put them into a recycler with quality modules, which will mostly spit out common ingredients, but will occasionally give us uncommon or rare. Any common ingredients we just craft back into blue circuits to be crushed, and any uncommon or rare ingredients we can take away to be crafted into the respective quality of blue circuit. Of course, to craft blue circuits, we need to produce sulfuric acid, which I make in this horrific thing. I just use requester chests to feed the rare and uncommon blue circuit plants, and then realise, oh yeah, why aren't I using EM plants over here? Not only will I get 50% more blue circuits, but it's got an extra slot to fill with a quality module. Once I set up the fourth ingredient for mech armour, supercapacitors, for quality production, I just need to do the most important bit, start gambling for quality Mark II power armour. Funnily enough, I'm really holding out hope for an uncommon power armour, not rare, because I'll get enough materials to craft an uncommon mech armour, and potentially gamble it up to rare, in like an hour or two, but it'll take me a dozen hours to get enough rare ingredients. Whilst I'm waiting, I do some remote housekeeping on Nalvis, as my original stone patch has dried up, so I need to connect a new one to continue producing purple and military science. After 2 attempts, I still have no quality armour. I guess it really is weighed in the house's favour. However, when it rains, it pours, and on the 6th try, we get a rare Mark II power armour. It sucks because we can't use it yet, but it's good because that's basically a guaranteed rare mech armour in like 10 hours. It's worth noting that in the last episode, I made a mistake talking about the probability of an item jumping multiple tiers of quality in one step. I said that the chance of going from common to rare was the quality chance squared. So if the quality percentage was 8%, then the chance of getting a rare would be 8% of 8%, so 0.64%. In reality, the chance of getting a higher quality is just the quality percentage times 10% for each tier. So to get a rare, it would be 0.8%, and to get epic, if I unlocked it, it would be 0.08%. Anyway, enough ranting. We've got that uncommon power armour we wanted, so I'm just waiting for the last few percentages of the research to finish before I get my cool new armour. Cool new armour is not all that we want. We also want cool high quality equipment to put in it too, starting with quality robo parts. I'm making use of the recycler to turn any normal quality robo parts back into 25% of the ingredients, and just keeping any uncommon and rare ones. It's not too long before the mech armour researches, but at that moment we don't quite have enough uncommon holmium plates produced to craft it. After a short wait, the last few craft, and it's gambling time again. Unfortunately, the house always wins, so we're stuck with an uncommon suit. Do not fret, however, as it's time we ascend from the flesh, enter our metal sarcophagus, and become one with the machine. You can see that its equipment grid is absolutely massive, but the best bit by far is the jetpack. Any time we're about to collide with an object, we just jump up and fly over it, making it a sort of extremely overpowered version of the squeak through mod. It'll even jump you over the top of a train if it's about to hit you, so there's like 90% of my deaths prevented in one fell swoop. Its only weakness is, surprisingly, demolishers. If you cast your mind back to the Vulcanus episode, I said that the smoke and shockwaves that the demolishers release mess with my flying robots. Well, it also gunks up mech armour, making it temporarily unable to fly. Now that I have my mech armour, I'm literally just waiting for my quality equipment to craft, and I'm even shipping in some fission cells from Nalvis to try to roll for quality portable fission reactors. I didn't realise it at this moment, but quality equipment and buildings don't actually consume more power, so this probably wasn't as essential as I thought. This is the grid I ended up with when I left. I know it's ugly, I didn't really care and just wanted to get to Gleba, and you won't see it again, so it's okay. The highlights for me are definitely the plus 246% movement speed and the 112 robot capacity, which you will see me make much use of on Greba in the next video. That's right, it is unfortunately that time of the video again, where we jet off into orbit, cross interplanetary space, and peer into the darkness of an unexplored alien world, ready to be explored next time. I want to thank you for watching, remind you to check out my Discord for updates on coming videos, and finally to thank my Ko-Fi supporters for supporting me. Their names are on screen now. Adios.